Hello, Warhammer YouTubers, and today is July 4th. And in addition to being, I guess, the American Independence Day, um, I just wanted to make a video about the 1 year anniversary of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, because it also happens to follow on this day as well. Um, and for me personally, this is basically the 1 year anniversary of my YouTube channel. And kind of like the golden age of my hobby where I've really tried to um, reconnect and try to re-engage and get some solid hobbying and painting and so on and so forth. And I remember when AOS launched. It wasn't that long ago, obviously, but I remember getting like the initial hard book, and just reading it with kind of interest in a way that I haven't in some time. I really thought that the initial book was a really interesting read, and just the whole new art, the whole new game system being launched was a very interesting experience. GW just doesn't, hasn't launched a completely new game system since the 80s, so it was an interesting experience. But of course, there's the all new, the lore and the whole new story, and all the new images and art, and completely different world being created. And for me, I thought it was a real treat. Um, but as we know, for many, it was kind of a period of disbelief, anger, and uncertainty. Although there were some that were kind of enthusiastic, like myself. Um, Kind of looking back over the past year, those that played throughout 2015 had an opportunity to play wargaming without points, uh, in the way that Warhammer was in its infancy, in its earliest editions. And I thought it was. I've personally found that the experience was very rewarding, and I was one of those that really was excited by the fact that there were no points, and kind of the newfound freedom and the community involvement that really entailed. Um, I look back at the past year as being really a period of experimentation on the part of Games Workshop, um, and a possible method, a project to essentially gain a new type of gamer into the fold. I think of rules as going in kind of patterns of complexity, and then they revert back to very basic kind of rule sets. And over time, they grow in complexity again. It kind of goes in this loop. And I think that's basically what we're going to see here. But this past year was, in my opinion, just a very interesting period to kind of be in the hobby, to experience kind of a whole new game, because this was a period in which the casual player really had a little bit more of an emphasis in the hobby than in previous years. There's different play styles, there's new rules, there's new art and imagery of the factions. Everything's getting remade and re-envisioned. But of course, it was too much for many legacy players, and many people put their armies on eBay or left Warhammer, or they tried other games, which I think was also a very good experience for many gamers to branch out and try other things. But I thought that the gameplay of Age of Sigmar was in many ways improved. I love the old world, and I still do, but I love kind of the gore-soaked positivity of AOS, and just like the idea that chaos is, at least for a time, you know, being pushed back. They've really brought all the factions to the level chaos had, and now it's just all about the minions and the gods and kind of engaging one another, which is what chaos had always kind of had, in the realm, in the warp, in the realm of chaos. So you know this isn't going to be groundbreaking information or anything. I just wanted to kind of go back and just remind people of the past year and of the anniversary that we're kind of going through right now, Because I think, if you're an Age of Sigmar player, you were basically given an enormous amount of releases, an unprecedented amount of support by Games Workshop. Because to get the game off the ground, there were just so many new releases from the Stormcast, New Chaos, kind of, the Bloodbound, and so on and so forth. The Lizard Men, the Fire Slayers, the Iron Jaws, this Hilvaneth, in addition to numerous other battle tombs, the Realm Gate War books, which I absolutely love. I love those books so much. And just, you know, nearly almost week after week after week of Age of Sigmar, to some extent at the expense of the other game systems, like 40K. But there's so much still to be released. Even though we're 1 year old, it's still really in its infancy. There are so many story arcs that have not been explored. What always springs to mind is like what's going to happen to Slanesh, what's going to happen to the light and shadow elves, um, and coinciding with the launch of AOS, GW really, I guess through a change in management, or maybe they just recognized that to launch this new game they had to make some massive changes, and they were a long time coming. But GW really made a dramatic turn in its customer relations, I think, to the benefit of the whole Warhammer community. So, coinciding with the launch of Age of Sigmar, very soon thereafter, they started to really re-engage with the community. They, and branch out and start to communicate again, and they've just been doing a lot of really good things that they probably should have been doing for many years, but now they're doing it, and I think they're doing it very well. This is also the period where they started to rebrand their stores away from, I guess, Games Workshop, which has kind of a very negative connotation, to Warhammer, which has you know, people might think it's expensive or something like that, but it has generally a positive connotation. This is also the period where the FAQs were starting to come out, and so like there are many reasons why I think this past year has been a really great year to be in the hobby. So, with the arrival of the General's Handbook in the next couple weeks, it looks as though we'll be celebrating an expanded version of AOS. Um, Basically, almost like a 2.0 for all intents and purposes. There's just additional rules. This is something that I think we're going to see for a while to come. But I would honestly say that I think the future is bright for Age of Sigmar. Um, we'll see how it's done commercially. The indications are so far indicate that it's actually doing a bit better than previous editions of Warhammer Fantasy. Um, but I hesitate to embrace those numbers because it's been a very weak year for 40K. So it's still the sales are still less than 40K. That's obviously kind of a given. But given the fact that there were almost very limited 40K sales, it kind of almost stands to reason that the Age of Sigmar sales would be growing in comparison. But I think the future is bright. I really do. I've loved the past year. I continue to think that Age of Sigmar is a really great game, and it's a lot of fun. And I look forward to what I hope will be a very successful year of growth. More beautiful models. The thing I really, as a collector, even that I really love about Age of Sigmar is just the breaking of the traditional armies into all these different smaller components. And the indication we have at this point would seem to be a lot of these, maybe not in the immediate future, but a lot of them are going to be really flushed out in the way that they have these other armies over the past year. And that gives an enormous amount of possibilities. It really increases the amount in which players can explore and the different models you can own and play with. And I'm really looking forward to more great games with my family and friends. And hopefully, you'll have the same attitude about Age of Sigmar, and we'll look forward to another great year together. So, yeah, July 4th, Independence Day, and happy birthday to Age of Sigmar. Thanks for listening, and have a good one.